Here is the walkthrough for Excel Chapter 8 using simple interest to consolidate debt. For this case, we're going to be working on Chapter 8, and we have a case study on debt consolidation. We are still working with simple interest, however, so let's get started. Now, the first thing I want to do is take out the pieces that are important here. So we can see that Shannon and Duncan Fisher were concerned about their level of debt. They had borrowed from their bank to purchase their house, car, and computer. For these three loans, the Fishers must make a regular monthly payment. So they owe money to, they also owe $6,000 to MasterCard and $2,500 to Visa. They've decided to meet with a consumer credit counselor to gain control of their debts. Okay, so they have some loans. They have a MasterCard and they have a Visa. Okay, so what I know so far is, and maybe what I'll do is I'll move this down just a little bit, pull that down, so that we can have all of their loans, what their amount is, and maybe what the rate is. Okay, just so we have some idea of what's going on. And then this will actually just give us an idea of what they have going on. And maybe I'll just make this, I'll leave that the way it is. So let's see what they got. So they borrowed for these loans, they must make regular payments. So the couple owe $6,000 to MasterCard and $2,500 to Visa. Okay. The counselor explained to them the details of their loans and credit card debts. Shannon and Duncan were shocked to discover that whereas the computer and car loans had an interest rate of 7.95%, so 7.95% per annum, their credit cards had an interest rate of 19.99%. The counselor pointed out that the interest rate of their three loans, okay, so it was 19.99 for this one too. Interest rate on their three loans was reasonable. However, because the interest rate on the credit card was high, she advised them to borrow money at a lower interest rate to pay off their credit card debts. Okay, so that's what we know so far. That's what they have going on. So I'll just make this so that we can read it. And that is their data. So the credit counselor suggested, so we're still looking at what the credit counselor is talking about. They suggested that they should consider obtaining a home equity line of credit. Okay, so let's just put some information on the home equity line of credit. Okay, she explained that the rate of interest on the line of credit would likely be a few percentage points higher than the prime rate, but lower than the rate of interest charged on their credit cards. So Shannon and Duncan would have to make a minimum payment every month similar to that of the credit card. The payment would then be applied to pay all the interest and the portion of the principal balance owing on the line of credit. The line of credit would allow them to make monthly payments higher than the minimum so they could pay as much towards the principal balance as they would like. A line of credit appealed to them, and it helps them feel more in control of their finances and gave them the resolve to pay off their credit card debts. So they met with their bank manager. They were approved for $15,000 line of credit. So let's give them a $15,000 line of credit. Immediately, they paid off the $6,000 owed on the MasterCard and the $2,500 that they owed on their Visa with their line of credit. So they then decided to pay off the line of credit over the next 10 months by making monthly payments equal to 1/10 of the original credit balance, plus the simple interest owed on the remaining line of credit balance. The simple interest rate on the line of credit is expected to be 6.25%. I haven't quite gotten to paying this off yet. I just want to get the information down there. There, 6.25% over the next 10 months. They agreed to cut up their credit cards and not charge any more purchases until they paid off their line of credit. Okay, so I haven't answered any questions. I haven't done anything. I'm sort of just setting this up. So they have a home equity line of credit, and they paid off their MasterCard and Visa with their home equity line of credit. So let's just say that so the amount they ended up borrowing was equals our MasterCard plus our Visa, okay? So I just used that because now we know that they borrowed $8,500, all right? So that's getting it started. I do want to make sure that we know what our color codes are going to be, and we'll put that in a bit as well. So let's get started with question 1. In question 1, and I'm just going to put question 1 down here just so that it sets it up. So question 1 says, suppose Shannon and Duncan pay off their credit cards with their line of credit on April 20th. Okay, so April 20th is when they're going to have an outstanding principal. They're going to make payments beginning in May, so the 20th of May. And then they will make payments for the next 10 months. So let's do 10 months worth of payments. So we'll go to February. And we're going to create a table just to see how much interest they used in this repayment plan. So the first thing we're going to look at is how they're going to pay. So it says they decided to pay off the line of credit over the next 10 months, by making monthly payments equal to 1/10 of the original line of credit balance. Okay, so this is the, I don't know, let's call it 1/10. That's how much they're going to pay. 1/10 of the original credit balance plus simple interest. Okay, so we're going to add in the simple interest, which is I equals PRT. And then we're going to find out what the payment actually is going to be. So we'll add those two up. And we will find out how much our outstanding principal is, or outstanding balance. So this is going to be our balance. And because we're working with simple interest, we're going to be working in days. So we're just going to figure out what our days are. So we're going to just figure out, so between April and May 20th, because April has 30 days, that's the value we're going to be using. So we'll just figure out how many days are in each month, and it's probably the easiest way to do it. So 30 days has April, 30 days has September, so we know that it's September is 30. June and November, they all have 30. The rest of them have 31. Just have my little thingy there. Should know this off by heart, but December has 31. January has 31. And then February, because we're going to be paying it off in February, we're not too worried about February. So this is where we start. So we're starting to sort of build this question so that then in the end, we're going to add up our interest. All right, so we're not making a payment on April 20th, but this is the balance starts on April 20th. So the amount we have borrowed is going to be $8,500. So I'll just select that. And we're going to start in May. And we're going to figure out what 1/10 is. That's going to equal the amount we borrowed, which is, I'm going to F4 this so that we have that. Just because it's absolute cell referencing, I want to absolute cell reference this times 1/10, so 0.1. So we're going to be paying $850 10 times. Okay, so I'll just fill that down. Hopefully it works. So $850 10 times is what we're going to be paying. I'll make the first one, maybe I'll just make it currency, and then the rest of them because I want to make it comma style. Okay. Our interest is that we are going to use I equals PRT. So that equals the principal, which is our outstanding balance, times our rate, which is our interest rate is 6.25. And I'm going to absolute cell reference that just so it stays there. And times our time. And in this case is going to be 30 days. So the days right up here divided by 365. And I will also make that into a currency. And the following ones down here, I'll just make into comma style. Okay. So my payment equals the $850 plus our principal times rate times time, our interest. So that's going to be our payment. Okay. So our balance here, because we're paying down principal of $850, not including the interest. So our balance is going to be equal to our current outstanding balance minus the $850 that we're paying. Okay, so our balance now is going to be $76,500. So now that I've completed this, I should be able to just fill this whole thing in all the way down until we get to January for sure. And we should end up with owing $850 down here. We also have to figure this, we can actually fill in and continue on to February, but we should have zero left. So let's just fill that down, and looks good. Okay, so as it sits right now, we have created our first table. If I want to find out what my total interest is, and I'm going to do total, and I will just sum up the values here. But first I really want to change this because there's too many dollar signs. There we go. To make it a little bit bigger. And I will just do an auto sum, and that should answer our first question, which is how much interest, it says, what did it say? How much interest will they pay on this repayment plan? So I do have this all ready to go. I do want to create, I'm just moving these things over a little bit. I do want to create some kind of color coding. So I'll just put this over here for now. I can move it if I want it out of there. So this is my color code. And I need something for input. So just places where I would input values. Where is my answer? And what are calculated? Okay. And so we'll choose those colors and we'll follow the code. So any input, I'll go with, no, I don't want to go with that. Input, we'll sort of make it a yellow one. That means we're going to input some data in there. The answer I'll make green. I should probably have followed another one. So the answer is going to be green, and the calculated ones will make kind of orangey. Okay, so basically the calculated ones we're not going to change. But any of the input is where we would input the information, and the answer is the answer we're looking for. All right, so if we start with the input, we'll start with inputs. And I clicked on there, and I want to make it yellow. So our Visa, our MasterCards, those were inputs. Just want to make sure it's the right color. And of course, all of our rates were going to be inputs, so we would put in the inputs. We would also put in the amount we borrowed. Oh no, that's calculated. Our interest rate, that's an input. I think that's it. And answers, so let's look at answers. And if we have any that are left over, we'll just fix them. My answer is actually this field right down here. So that's a green one. So that's my answer. And then these are all calculated, hey? So this one is a calculated field. That's a calculated field. So we don't have to put any data in there. These are formulas, calculated fields, all in here, all the way down. So all of these are calculated fields. Okay. So these are inputs. We did input those, so I guess I should put them in as inputs. So now that we know what our data is, we probably didn't need to put that in there. This value is a calculated field as well. Let's change colors. Okay. And I actually should make that currency. Perfect. So we completed question 1, and we managed to answer the question. And then if they happen to borrow more money, and if they happen to be paying still 1/10, or the interest rate changes, it would automatically update that. So let's move on to question 2. So I will start question 2 right here. And it says, suppose Shannon and Duncan had not gotten the line of credit, but kept their credit cards. They decided not to make any more credit card purchases. Instead, they borrowed $8,500 from Shannon's parents. Okay, so they actually borrowed again. So they still borrowed. So they borrowed the amount. And it says equal to 1/10 of the original credit card debt plus simple interest at 10%. Okay, so I'm going to put in 10% there. They're going to make their monthly payments on the 20th of each month, beginning in May. We're going to create basically the same schedule, showing their monthly payments for the next 10 months. How much interest would they have paid using this repayment plan? So I'm going to kind of duplicate what I have here. And I think maybe what I'll do is I'll kind of cheat a bit, and I'll just copy all of this, and I'll have to change a bunch of formulas in there, but maybe I'll just paste this right down here, and then I'll fix all the stuff. I'm not really worried about it. It just saves me the hassle of having to redo it. So I'll look at the borrowed. The borrowed equals my MasterCard here plus my Visa, so we're still borrowing that amount right there. And then I will get rid of this Q1. And sometimes it's easier to, just start again, but I'm just not gonna. Okay, so this balance borrowed is actually, in this case, going to equal the 8,500. So I'll have to fix that part right there. My days don't need to be fixed. My formula here, instead of F17, is going to be the amount borrowed. It's actually the same amount, but I'm going to delete that, and instead I'll make this amount here is the amount we borrowed, just because we're on separate questions. And I will F4 that, or make it an absolute cell reference. So the numbers aren't going to change, and then I'll just fill that down. The numbers aren't going to change, but it will allow me to make sure I'm on the right track here. I'm going to change that to a comma. And now my interest rate. My interest rate needs to be based upon this. So I'm going to just basically look at my schedules here. So it says that the balance borrowed, that's good. So it's stuck there. Is using that. The only thing I have to change is my interest rate. Okay. So you'll notice that it is saying it's on G16. And the reason it stayed on G16 was because I did an absolute cell reference to G16. So I said stay there, but I allowed it to fill down and use relative cell referencing for the rest of them. And that's why this one worked so well. Okay. So I'm going to change this from G16. I'm just going to change it to say G35. Okay. So if I change it to say G35 and push enter, it should do a really good update there. And then I'll just have to fill it down because it wasn't updated. So I'll just update that whole thing there. And we will make sure that we're looking good. So it was kind of a bit of a cheat, but all we did was change the interest rate here, which allowed us to, we fixed this so that the balance borrowed for 30 days. So we had our principal, which was $8,500, times our rate, which is 10%, times 30 days over 365. Okay. And then I'm going to just make all this comma instead of with the $sign figure right there. And now our total down here is $391. And you'll notice that it took the formatting as well, so I don't have to worry too much about that. And so it says, how much interest would they have paid using the repayment plan? And it ended up being $391. So question 2 was a little bit faster. And the reason why it was a little bit faster was because I copied and pasted what I did up there and then just modified it a little bit. Okay, so now the final thing we're going to do is number 3. We're not going to bother with number 4, but we're going to do number 3. So I'll just go down here and I will put question 3. And the question for question 3 says, how much money did Shannon and Duncan save on interest by borrowing from Shannon's parents? If we look at this question, all they're doing is trying to find out what the difference is between what they paid on interest in one and what they paid in interest in another. Okay, so the amount of interest, so we have our home equity line of credit. That actually equals, and I'm just going to reference the cell. So we reference this cell up here. So that's the home equity line of credit. The parents they cost them, and that equals this cell right here. Enter. And this difference is the difference between the two. So that equals this minus this was how much they paid. So they didn't actually save anything. They paid. So there, I'll just make that the green right there is the answer. And this is I put in a formula for those as well. So I'll just make that into the formula that we have there. So question 3 says, how much money did they save on interest by borrowing from Shannon's parents? Well, the problem was the interest for the home equity line of credit was 6.25, and their parents charged them 10%. So they didn't actually save any money at all. They paid an extra $146 if they went with their parents. So that's it for this is chapter 8. Should help you along with your case.